Hi, this is Thane. I am back for my reflections on week 4 here. First of all, I really liked the article from Wired, the excerpt from, what was it, Clive Thompson's new book, Smarter Than You Think. I thought it was really interesting reading, as was referenced on the lecture this week from our professor. I really thought it was interesting, the stuff about having an audience, how that changes your performance and what you do and what you're writing. And it made me think about an interview I heard once from a writer named Brian K. Vaughan. He's a comic book writer. He's also written for the TV show Lost. But he's really well known for a book called Y: The Last Man, and he's currently writing a book called Saga, which is a very popular comic book that's being printed right now. But I heard an interview from him once, and he was being asked advice on writing and how to be a good writer. And he said when he was much younger, he asked the same question to Neil Gaiman, who's also a very famous writer of comic books and other things. And Neil Gaiman's advice to Brian K. Vaughan was to try and get a job as soon as possible where people are reading what you're writing, and that'll make you a much, much better writer. And of course, it's easier said than done getting a job writing, but the idea, I think it's the same idea, where an audience immediately makes you a different writer and a better writer and gives you incentive to be a really good writer. And I think that reflects on what Mr. Thompson was saying in his book about how if you go from no one reading your stuff to 10 people reading your stuff, it's a huge difference. And it'll, in theory, will make you a much, much better writer. Let's see, what else? Oh, speaking of Brian K. Vaughan, as I continued to read the Wired article, I thought it was interesting that they talked about how across history people have invented the same things at the same time or very nearly the same time. And, he goes into the whole thing about access and whatnot and how that can change now. But I just thought it was interesting that as I was reading the beginning, I was thinking about Brian K. Vaughan with the advice about having people actually reading your work. Because in Y: The Last Man, one of the plot elements has to do with, I don't think it's Mr. Vaughan's theory, I think it's someone else's theory that he adapts into the book, but it's the same thing about synchronicity, about people all around the world coming up with the same thing at the same time. And it's, in Y: The Last Man anyway, it's like a biological thing that happens throughout the human race, and that kind of ties into why things happen a certain way they happen in that series, which I guess doesn't have a whole lot to do with this class, but I just thought it was interesting that that Mr. Vaughan had things to say about all kinds of stuff in the Wired article. But anyway, moving right along, what else do we have here for this week? What benefits are realized by reworking popular culture as opposed to more traditional forms of creative production? I kind of already talked about that before, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to jump right ahead to the what responsibilities do libraries have in addressing the digital divide? I think libraries are great places to provide technology to people who normally wouldn't get it. I think that's kind of the whole point behind makerspaces, maybe, is to give people access to that stuff. I think the idea of lending stuff out is problematic, not just because equipment like that is really expensive, but it's also heavy and kind of stationary. I've talked before that I work for the Denver Public Library, and they have an idea lab, and they have all kinds of crazy, cool technological stuff, and I'm always talking to them about bringing it out to the branch where I work, and that's not feasible for a lot of the heavier equipment and whatnot. But in little ways, you can bring little things out. I know they just got a bunch of, I think they're called Go cameras, these little teeny tiny cameras that are supposed to be indestructible, I guess, and you can run around with them, tie them to your dog or whatever, and get all kinds of crazy video with them. So I know they're lending those out, so that's kind of like a small way they're sharing the technology where kids will run around with them and then bring them back to the Idea Lab and make a movie out of whatever they recorded. So I think in small ways you can lend technology, but in bigger ways it becomes problematic if you're dealing with like a digital DJ station with the turntables and a sound booth. It's just not going to happen. So people are going to have to come to the library to do that, I guess. What else do we have to say here? So another reflection question was, in what ways do you think audience influences content creation? I think last week Liz did a really good job talking about this in her video blog that she did. So that's a little shout out to Liz that you should go listen to her blog, because it was really good last week and she touched on that. And I think we had a little bit of a back and forth in the discussion about that. But I think with more interaction between audiences, fans and whatnot, and people who are creating content, there's definitely going to be an influence. I think we've already seen that. I think Snakes on a Plane is a movie that I think got a lot of buzz around it while it was still in production, and everyone was kind of talking about it. And as I recall, there was a lot of expectations about it on the internet and what people were writing about it. And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe reading somewhere that they went back and refilmed stuff and added things to the movie to meet the expectations of people talking about it online. I think it went from a much milder rated movie to some more hardcore stuff because that's what people wanted. They wanted more of Samuel L. Jackson swearing and whatnot in it. So I think it influenced it that way. I also think, I didn't see the movie, but I heard it was pretty crappy. So maybe that's not always a good thing to have audience influence. I used to work for a toy company a while ago, right when I graduated from undergrad. I worked for a toy company called McFarlane Toys, and we did a lot of comic book toys and movie tie-ins and a lot of what people I guess would call geek culture type toys. And they had a website, and they had fans who would post on the forum on the website and whatnot. And they listened to everything the fans said. Like, they would put out designs of toys before they were complete, and if the nerd guys on the website didn't like them, they would change them immediately because they very much viewed that as their audience, and they very much catered to that audience. And I kind of thought it was ridiculous that they were changing all this crap because someone didn't like the way the overt kill android from Spawn didn't look exactly like he did in the comic. But I think fan bases are powerful and they are influential, and especially kind of like niche marketing stuff like that really wants to please those people. So they pretty much bent over backwards to give people exactly what they wanted. And see, the last thing I want to say is I was reading what's it called? A New Culture of Learning from Thomas and Brown, and their whole point seemed to be that playing is the new way of learning. And I believe it was Einstein who said play is the most important form of research. That's not really a new idea, but they're kind of framing it in new technology and whatnot. And in the interests of playing, I'm trying something new this week with my video broadcast here. I'm trying my green screen back here. I don't know if it's going to work, but I do have a green wall behind me, and I'm going to try and see if I can do some green screen stuff with it just for fun, just to let my imagination and curiosity carry me away into new learning like Mr. Thomas and Brown talk about. So we'll see if it works. If you guys just see a plain green screen behind me, you'll know it did not work at all. But I'm trying, and that's what's important. Okay, I'll see you guys later.